of Women Medical University and Pakistan Association of Pathologists and Muzaffarabad Medical College, Kashmir. The topic of today's webinar is analytical quality control, and our today's respected speaker, Professor Nuzat Shahid, and our panelist, as usual, Professor Brigadier Amir Ijaz. So before starting today's 24th PMA webinar, I will request Professor Rashid Saab to recite the Holy Quran so that we can start our this webinar with the name of Allah.
Right. Thank you, sir. Jazakallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والمؤمنون والمؤمنات بعضهم أولياء بعض يأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر ويقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة ويطيعون الله ورسوله أولئك سيرحمهم الله إن الله عزيز حكيم. तर्जुमा। और मोमिन मर्द और मोमिन औरतें आपस में एक दूसरे के मददगार हैं। वो नेकी की तलकीन करते हैं और बुराई से रोकते हैं और नमाज कायम करते हैं और ज़कात अदा करते हैं और अल्लाह और उसके रसूल की फरमाबरदारी करते हैं। ये ऐसे लोग हैं जिनको अल्लाह अपनी रहमत से नवाजेगा। यकीनन अल्लाह इक़्तिदार का भी मालिक है, हिकमत का भी मालिक। सदक़ल्लाहुल अज़ीम।
जज़ाकल्लाह। जैसा कि हमें मालूम है कि फिफ्थ वेव इज इन पाकिस्तान एंड ओमिक्रॉन is spreading very rapidly. And last night, NCOC has imposed the restriction and the small lockdowns. And but we all should be very careful in taking the mask and all other SOPs.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Professor Mulazim. Assalamu alaikum and good morning to everyone. I'm grateful to PAP and the PMA for providing this opportunity, and I hope that it proves to be a good learning exercise and opportunity to collaborate in future as well, as I was discussing with Professor Amir. Anyhow, today's lecture is about analytical quality control, and this is, you can say, the core activity or the crux of activity which is going on in the lab and falls under the domain of the pathologist particularly, so that they need to be aware that how to the process to carry out this analytical quality control and its importance. Everybody knows generally, but last time a question was raised: what is, by a hematology trainee, what is the difference between quality assurance and quality control? I dedicated one slide before I proceed onto the main topic. The difference between quality assurance and quality control is that overall laboratory or any healthcare establishment should be managed with a following the management principles, which are the quality management systems like ISO certifications, but the one which is dedicated, the quality management system for laboratories, is called ISO 15189. Obviously, that starts with the spelling out the quality policy with which every employee and every person in that specialty in laboratory is committed, then followed in compliance with with the spirit of the quality policy that is translated through quality assurance. Quality assurance is not restricted to a small aspect. It encompasses all the actions to ensure that quality of the diagnostic test. That encompasses whole of the laboratory functioning, starting from the top management to the bottom tier. It involves many aspects: the surroundings, the equipments, the reagents, the documentation, and a lot more than that. So there this can be further divided into two aspects. Quality control is the narrowed part, which is restricted to ensuring that the results that being produced in the lab are reliable and meets the quality performance criteria, which we talked about previously, and we are going to talk about it again. And broadly, this quality controls that is practically done in the lab are some internal quality control procedures and following an external quality proficiency program. And obviously, quality assurance includes all other aspects of good laboratory practices that includes, as I stated before, and you can imagine the waste disposal and procurement all also fall in the domain of quality assurance. So that is basically a difference. That is a all-encompassing broader umbrella, which works under a total quality system. And we are restricting ourselves today to the quality control aspect, which is the analytical quality control aspect. Now, another term people may encounter over the time is called analytical quality assurance. Now, analytical quality assurance is again a broader term under which the quality control system will fall. And this involves all those things like operational specification charts, quality goals, quality essential analytical quality assurance goals, and the means to achieve those. We are going to talk about this today. In fact, we will be touching about the analytical quality assurance apart from the specific part of the analytical quality control. If you remember this slide last time, we started off talking about the selection of method and how to go about that. We also previously talked about why these methods are selected, what's the diagnostic accuracy, what is the clinical utilization of a laboratory test. And then in step 2, we did touch in the last lecture, what are the performance goals, and a little briefly about the validation and verification of the test within the lab environment. And then once it has been decided and you have preliminaries have been done and the method has been proven to be fit for purpose, then it is put into a routine use. And the patient samples start getting tested. And that's once we start performing the test, then we need to make sure that continuously we produce the reliable results. And for that, to have the assurance that the reliable results are produced, we do the quality control activities of the test, and then we report the results. Now, what we are talking about today is about this aspect. We talked about this aspect previously. I'll go through these things again because these two are so interlinked that unless you have a baseline data on this, you probably can't move on to this thing. This is a mistake very frequently, or you can say that omission that is frequently done is that people jump to the LJ chart and they say that we are, monitoring the quality control. LJ chart is actually the last thing to be done. Before that, you need to know what is the test performance, where it is standing, and then you have to make certain decisions. Then you have to plan a quality control, and then you can actually go on daily monitoring with the LJ chart. Okay, so the learning objectives of today's is that I'm going to again give you a brief background of why performance of the test should be determined. We already did it a little bit of. Then we had already talked about the standards and goals of test performance after building a concept of what is a total allowable error, which is the actually analytical standards and goals set up by international systems. Then we talked about concept of a medical decision limit, where the quality control is of utmost importance. I touched upon, I'm going to give you a detail of operational specification charts of test performance, and then method decisions based on the method performance, and what is the logic of actually analytical quality control. So broadly, we'll be talking about the concepts of the things that are to be applied in the laboratory. The details and the individual applications and the other aspects of that can be taken up later, or you can read it in the text, because it's once you know the concept of it, then it's easy to actually dig out how to go about that. Then talk about the concept of error detection, the types of errors, and planning the whole analytical quality control, and finally, the selection of West Card rules and statistical basis of the daily quality control in the medical labs. That is all will be the concepts that I'll be touching upon. Okay, so as I said previously, any system, whether it's a system going on in a laboratory, or in fact any system which is occurring in the nature, is subject to certain variation. And here, in particular context of laboratory, I talked about the biological variation. Individuals do not have a very static sort of biology all the time. There is intra-individual variations, and there's an inter-individual between the individual variations, and these are the biological variations which are normally happening. Then once we start testing individuals and patients in the laboratory, they will encounter analytical variation. The analytical variation will be within a day analytical variation and between the day analytical variations, and this will constitute the total analytical variation. Now, these variations are just a natural normal phenomena, and that's why we call it as a normal cause variation. So we will have a normal cause variation in each laboratory for each analyte or measurand, and which we will label, which arises because of the inherent biological variation and analytical variation. And these are a normal cause variation. Now we have to document that these normal cause variation, what is the extent of normal cause variation within an individual laboratory, because every individual laboratory has a different circumstances, has a different working, little bit different from other ones. So the first step was to actually document the normal cause variation attributable to this thing within each and individual laboratory for each analyte. So we talked about, I'm sorry. Okay, so we talked about the medical decision limits and the total allowable analytical error, which is the standard setup for each analyte. So we also decided and that we are in laboratory, our variation should be within the provided quota, or the allowable error that is allowed for, or the total analytical variation which is allowed for each analyte. And medical decision limits are the critical decision levels where the analytical performance of the test, including the coefficient of variation and bias, is the most critical, because at that level, the decisions are being made for either diagnosis or monitoring or interventions or all those clinical decisions. So those are the levels at which the quality should have the minimum chances of error. That is why the quality control material usually assesses or provides the analytes of the level at which the clinical decisions are going to be made. So laboratory data are most critically, carefully interpreted at these clinical decision limits. You also remember that I listed their criteria agreed upon of acceptable performance. I'm not going to go into the detail, just to give you a recap that we do have an analytical performance goals already stated and spelled out and as standards and out there from different authorities, and that I also listed last time. It may be regulator, it may be professional societies, it may be some other bodies. So we said that in order to go through the process of knowing the normal cause variation and establishing, we performed certain experiment. And one of the experiments, the most important and commonly performed, is a replication experiment. And this replication experiment is to determine the imprecision within one individual laboratory. So once the replication experiment is performed by doing multiple readings on a given control, say 20 or even less or more than that, and then tabulating that result, calculating the statistics, and then plotting that data on a method decision chart. Now, this is what I told you last time, that's how I do it. You do have a lot of smart tools available out there. I'm just going to show you one of these. If you go onto this website, that makes the things very, very simple. So on this website, you have a quality control statistic calculator. You want to calculate the mean and ST, you can click on their chart, and then you can have a free copy of your own. And here is, once you have this copy, you can actually go and fill in the data that you have. For example, if I have, equipment, say Biolabo, and I want to do ALT and units per liter, and you are doing a biorad third party control, which is normal level, and then you can keep on. Okay, there you are. That is your probably daily control that you are running on there, and these are sort of reading you might be getting, or whatever the reading you keep on plotting there. And once you have the desired number of readings, you just want to click all of these parameters, and there you go. You have 12 readings. You have that has calculated the mean, the standard deviation, and coefficient of variation. It gives you the standard -1, -2, -3 ST and plus ST. So that is the sort of tools, and there are so many other tools on this same website. I'm just demonstrating you this because last time actually somebody asked about this, so I said I'll just show you there. Okay. I don't know where I'm not able to switch back. Okay, so once you have this replication experiment done, you have calculated your mean STs and you have determined the imprecision in your laboratory and done the statistics. Okay, this is, then we proceed further. We want to know the bias. That is the laboratory, what the data that we are going to have. We have already generated the mean, ST, and coefficient of variation. Now, if you are participating in an external quality assurance program, that is the data which is useful in order to calculate the bias. If you doing it first time, you may start off with the mean, which is listed on the controls, which are already provided by the vendor who has provided the control. For biorad, you have it is according to the lot number. It is available on the online, available on the website. So once you have done this, you will going to calculate the bias. That is the value that you have obtained mean, the mean of your peer, and from that you are able to calculate bias, which is 6% in this case. So once you have the bias calculated, then you are going to use a method decision chart. Now, method decision chart is a chart, operational specification method decision chart, where you have plotted the total allowable error in the form of bias on this y-axis up to 100%, and observed imprecision up to 50. Now, the operating point that we are going to find for this particular test that we did, here we know the coefficient of variation, we know the bias. That's what we did. Our bias is here and our CV is here. So this is CV is the imprecision. Coefficient of variation is the imprecision, while the bias is the inaccuracy, and that was around 6%, while imprecision was around 4%. So your operating point is here. So you can, on this method decision chart, now you know that how good your test is performing. This is an excellent performance because already this criteria is defined in that, because your precision and your bias is very, very low. So you have a world-class performance here. Now you can actually calculate another sort of parameter, which is, analytical quality assurance is spelled out in those terms, and that is called sigma metrics. So what you have done is, as I said, we have calculated the monthly imprecision, which was 4.2. Bias was calculated comparing the data with your external assurance data, external proficiency data. And we already know the allowable total error for ALT is 25%. So we have all the necessary elements to calculate the sigma matrix. These are three things that you need. We know our imprecision, we know our inaccuracy, we know what is the performance standard for this test. And if you have to calculate, you can do it manually. And in fact, there's so many other smart tools available that you can go and, can calculate these. Here it is, the website by Westcard. And if you want to know and you want to calculate your own sigma matrix, we have a 25% quality requirement or allowable error, and observed bias was 4.22. Observed bias was 0.6, and CV was 4.22. And when we said calculate sigma matrix, it calculated sigma matrix to 5.78, which is actually, if you look at, is a world-class based on this sigma matrix chart, which shows that if your operating point for the test is somewhere here, it's near 6 sigma, then your number of defects or your number of errors is very small. So this concept of sigma matrix has actually evolved from automobile industry, and that actually calculates the number of errors per million. So here, if you apply it in the lab, here you can, in this particular test, you plotted your operating point was somewhere here near almost 6 sigma, which is a world-class quality. While if your test is performing, your operating point is somewhere here, this test has to be seriously, either discontinued or a lot of effort to be put in to make it, in acceptable quality. So unless you have your calculations done to find out what is the performance of your test, at what level your test is performing, you can't actually plan your quality for that analyte. And this is what we are going to talk about, that once you know the performance of your test, where it falls, where is the operating point, how acceptable or unacceptable it is, what is the sigma matrix, how much errors you may be doing while performing this test at that level, you cannot plan the quality assurance or quality control for that. So as I said, that you can divide the test into having a poor performance that does not meet the requirement for quality, as is not acceptable in routine operation, and you need to do a good lot of job to make it acceptable. One with the marginal performance will require a total quality control strategy that would need emphasis on well-trained operators, limiting probably only expert technician to carry out. You will have to invest a lot in statistical quality controls. Maybe you need higher number of controls. You will have to be stricter, and more number of Westcard rules need to be applied. You have to do aggressive preventive maintenance, and you have to carefully monitor the patient results, and you have to do all the additional effort to improve the test performance in order to make that test reliable. If you have a test which is performing, it has a good performance, then it can be managed in a routine service. Don't need to probably dedicate a expert operator to that, and you may need not invest that much in quality control procedure. Few controls would do well, and the resources will be conserved in that case, and you may not go, and many Westcard rules may not need to be applied. The one who is the test performing excellent, who has an excellent performance, is very easy to manage in routine services, and you can relax on that bit, and all sort of operators can do it, and minimum expense can keep on giving reliable results. That's how you are going to, this is the a concept, that the background, that how you decide which test, which analyte, which measurement needs how much of investment in quality. Okay, so analytical quality control, the concepts, the most important tools for ensuring the quality of laboratory results, that is ultimately the reliable and safe clinical decision through identification and reduction of errors. So far what we have said is that every test is going to encounter is going to have an inherent variation. It is only when this variation exceeds certain limit that they become errors. And that's the main aim of analytical quality controls, to identify and reduce the errors. So it includes two parallel mechanisms. One is the internal laboratory quality control, and the other is external quality or external quality assessment or proficiency testing. We are talking of this one today, and we'll talk about that later on. So the core concepts is that interpretation of the quality control is based on the assumption that the values resulting from previous measurements are subject to random variation or a normal cause variation. This variation follows a uniform pattern. It follows a statistically, pattern. And that pattern is, that is a Gaussian distribution. So the variation among 68.2% or 68% of the variation will lie within this, standard deviation, one standard deviation. 95% of the readings will fall within these two standard deviation. And if you are going to look at the variation of 99% of the variation is going to lie between these three standard deviation. So as I said, that the variation, normal cause variation, follows a statistical pattern, and that is a Gaussian distribution. That's the two standard deviation, and this is the third standard deviation. Okay, now we want to be aware of any special cause variation. That is, the core concepts behind it. We know there's inherent normal cause variation. We have documented that this is the normal cause variation within our laboratory. Now we want to know and detect if there are any special cause variation which is unacceptable, or which is called the error has occurred. And it is only possible if we are monitoring the variation every day. That is the reason that variation is being monitored every day. Variation in individual laboratory is, documented by using a material of known established values, which are called controls. We all know that. The variation from baseline level of previously documented variation, that is both the bias and imprecision, through a replication experiment. So we have done a replication experiment to find out both of these, and as a baseline, and observing, and you may need to actually document this variation again for any change, and maybe you have recalibrated the equipment, maybe you have changed the environment, you have relocated the equipment, the lot has changed. So that will be the time when you would want to know the variation again. So once you have established the baseline variation and there's no change, then you can keep on monitoring on a daily basis. Then you every day you want to know that the analytical variation is within acceptable limit for each day and for every run. And as I told you previously, run can be defined based on the number of tests or the shift of a technician, or the time frame. So that is your own way of defining the run. For every run, you may need to apply a control and test the control, because you want to know that the analytical variation does not fall in the category of errors, and that will lead to wrong clinical decision, and that will obviously create a patient safety issue. And this is what is about error detection. We, at the same time, we do not want that every time that we are so obsessed with the, detection of error, that actually we start, raising false alarms and unnecessarily rejecting the runs, which will entail causing delays and increasing the cost of tests. And this is what is called false rejection. So this concept is important. So I've listed these concepts. This is actually the crux of whole of this lecture and the concept, that we want to know what is the baseline variation, which is a normal cause variation, which is inherent in every system. Anything which is above this or special cause variation can be labeled as errors. And the detection of error can only happen if monitor the variation every day. And variation of individual labs is done, is documented by using control materials. And the variation of baseline of previously documented lab is through certain experiments. And then we keep on observing this analytical variation is acceptable because we want to detect errors, but at the same time, beware that we don't want to be so obsessed and so careful and go overboard that we are rejecting our runs unnecessarily and causing a lot of cost and delays, which we call as false rejection. So you need to have a balance. And the balance is creating balance and knowing that balance and proactively, doing and planning that for that balance is what is the quality control planning. So just to briefly, before we go, I want to give a concept of what is meant by systematic error. For example, a control having a true value, determined by through the traceability of control by the manufacturer and, finally referring to the universal standard for that analyte is the true value. So the value which is in your lab through your experiment is the mean of those values is your mean. So anything which is the value which is in your lab or your lab mean, which is different from the true value determined somewhere by the manufacturer through their own method and traceable to international control, is what is called systematic or error or the bias. Now, if you look at this, the deviation which is happening in your own, the variation which is happening around this mean is what is called random error. And both of these constitute the total analytical error. So that is what is, there's a limit defined for this, for your own. So that is to give you a concept about what is a systematic error and what is a random error. That's a variation around the mean, which is random error, and the difference from the true value or the true mean is the bias. So once you have this mean in your laboratory, you can have a situation which is totally under control, and it is just you are seeing a normal cause variation, which will be something, let's say here, it is around mean. While if you have something where the error, where the values are just away from the true value or the true mean, then that is, and consistently on that side, that shows some special cause variation. And this is what is called bias or systematic error. In another scenario, what you have is a lot of variation around the mean. And this enlarges the distribution or the variation. And this is what is called the random error or imprecision. So that's a situation under control, normal cause variation. These are the errors, and these are two types of errors. Systematic error, consistently same sort of errors, which deviates the reading from the true mean. And that's a lot of variation around the true, around the mean in your lab. And this is what's called imprecision. So now here is how we are going to plan the quality control. What happens is that you have to select the quality goals and how to go about and select the how many number of controls you're going to apply and which best card rules you're going to apply. This is a lot of confusion people have, that it's not one size fit all. In fact, you can actually have a proactive planning for each analyte. So as we said in QC method planning, we want to detect the error So there will be a probability of error detection. You want to decide that how much errors you want to detect. And obviously, you're going to weight against the probability of false rejection for that quality control procedure that you have planned for each analyte. The QC methods are, we know, are the detection system, and the detection systems do have some characteristics. And there are, as I said, true alarms and false alarm. So this is the true alarm, probability of error detection, and false alarm is probability of false rejection. The ideal QC method would be one where you have 100% probability of error detection and 0% probability of false rejection. However, this doesn't happen in a real-time scenario, a real-life scenario. So what you can have a realistic goal is that you can have something, probability of error detection, which is less than 100%, and probability of false rejection, which is more than 0. Got that concept? It is about a balance of true alarms with a false alarm, or probability of error detection with the probability of false rejection. And this ideal situation doesn't exist, so you have to decide what probability of error detection is acceptable to you and what probability of false rejection is acceptable to you. This is proactive quality control planning. So a realistic goal usually is a probability of error detection of 90% and probability of false rejection of around 5%. As I said, this is the realistic goal. And how do you achieve that? We have already done the groundwork. We already have the data. What we have done is we are going to plot as this is, the same as the method decision chart. But here what we are looking at is when you have a total reliable error out of which the bias is planned on y-axis and imprecision or is planned on the x-axis, and you have decided, or you have based on your replication experiment and the calculations we did before, plotted operating point here. Now, once you know the performance of your test or the operating point of your test, then you can actually approximate. This is a ready-made charts available by Westgard on its site, that you can have this approximated with this chart where they have, written out the Westgard rules to be applied. With these Westgard rules, what will be the probability of false rejection if you are using this number of controls in how many runs? In one run, how many controls, and what will be the probability of false rejection, and what Westgard rule will have 90% probability of error detection against this much probability of false rejection. Now you have a choice. You can actually, if your test is performing here, if you approximate it here, then probably you can plan your quality control by choosing 2 controls in each run. Here, the probability of false rejection is going to be 1%, while you have probability of error detection of 90%. And what Westgard rule you need to just apply is 1-3s. Or if you are here, this is 1-3s, 2-2s, and R4s. So that gives you a very beautiful and easy way to plan your quality control for an analyte whose operating point you know. And this is what is called a normalized operational specification chart. And this is what I was referring to in analytical quality assurance. If you decide that you want to, have a further reduction in false rejection, you may want to go and do this thing. You have 1-3s rule. The probability of false rejection is almost 0, with 2 controls run in each run. That's the use of operational specification chart when you are proactively planning your quality. Now here I have given an example of hemoglobin. In this, my lab operating point is here, which has has hemoglobin has a total reliable error of 7%. Bias was 0%, and imprecision was somewhere, here, 18%. So the operating point is here. And depending upon what of these parameters or what probability of false rejection I want to have, with a probability of error detection of 90%, I may choose any of these. In this case, you will have to run 3 controls each run, and you may choose 1-3S rule, where the probability of false rejection will be 1%. And if you use these 3 rules, you will have a probability of false rejection of 2%. So this is up to you, because it's already not bad performance, but probably it can do well further, reducing the imprecision. So now everything is so visible and transparent and clear to you and everyone, that where you are standing, what is happening, what you need to go, how much you want to invest in quality, what it will be the power properly error detection, what will be the false rejection, what Westcard rules you're going to apply. This is the quality control planning. As I said, again, if you have, this is the solution, as I said, based on your operating point. Here, the solution for 90% quality assurance is that you can choose either of these. Now, again, if you have operating point somewhere here, you may just need to use 2 controls and 1 run and a simpler Westcard rule. But at least you know where your quality of test is lying, and what is the performance of your test, and how you want to proceed, and proactively know that how much would be your error detection. You can reduce, if you are unable to do somehow control that, you can lower your expectation on quality. In that case, you may say that your probability of error detection is 80% and your probability of false rejection is this much. So in that case, you have operational specification chart which has analytical quality control stated less than 90%. There's another example of glucose, one from chemistry. Here, the operating point is somewhere here, and you have, you can choose either of these. You can plan that you want a probability of false rejection to somewhere 1% or maybe 0%. In that case, you would use 2 controls each run, and you will apply this Westcard rule. So depending upon this thing. So far, I have highlighted the parameters, the statistics that you are going to apply, and how to get those statistics, starting from your replication experiment. If you have an external quality assurance program going on, then you do, and you use the online tools to calculate your mean, your coefficient of variation. You can calculate the bias. Previously I showed you the analytical total reliable error that is available. The charts are available. They are also online. So for every analyte, the reliable error is different. So once you have all these information, you can go ahead and use these online calculators and calculate these stats for each and every analyte in your lab. So once you have done that, then you are going to do is make LJ charts. And this is the LJ chart for cholesterol, where you have a mean value, and you have in your lab established 1 ST, 2 ST, plus and on minus side. And now you start every day, you are going to, plot your controls here, both normal, high or low, whatever the number of controls you want to show. So now you're going to apply the Westcard rules, which you have already decided in your quality planning, that's a sort of Westcard rules that you're going to apply on this analyte. And you have the reason behind that, because the balance between error detection and probability of false rejection. So that's a sort of commonly applied rules, that is 1-2S, 1-3S. Everybody is very familiar to that. I'll not dwell upon that. So what we mean by 1-2S is that, one value of control is, one of the control has exceeded 2S limits. So it's not a rejection rule, it's a warning rule, and it may indicate a potential problem. And it means that further controls is required based on other criteria. So here you have one value measurement, which is above 3s, and it is applied in a series for each of the two sera, two control sera exceeding 3s limits. It is very sensitive to random errors. Then you have a rule where you have two controls having a value above 2s, and the last two series for each serum. That's what I mean. You have one control and then another control. Both controls above 2s. And this is a sensitive indicator of a systematic error. And then you have R4S, where your two controls, one going on one side of exceeding 2s and the other exceeding the other 2s. And last two series of each serum. That's what it is. One of the controls here and the other controls on the other side. That's 2,4s. Then you have 4 consecutive values on the same site exceeding 1s. That means if you're employing two controls, two control readings on one side, the other control readings on the same side. So that makes it 4s. So if you have an algorithm to follow for Westgard rules, you obtain the values of the control. And if you have 1, 2s, there's no problem. Situations is extremely acceptable and quite under control. If you have violation of 1, 3s, then you look, and that if you have applied that control limit Westgard rule on, you have decided to apply that one, then situation is out of control and that run or the series is rejected. If it is not violated, you look at 2, 2s. If it is violated, it is again out of control situation. If it is not violated, you look at R4s. And if it is violated, yes, situation is out of control. If it is not violated, you look at 4, 1s. And again, it may constitute rejection. And if it is not, then you can apply 10 mean rule and look at that. So that's the sort of algorithm. And this is the instruction that a pathologist is going to write and after quality planning for each analyte, and train his or her laboratory technologists that once you have controls applied according to your plan and they are applying a Westgard rule, that is when they are going to come up and ask you to intervene, or you may decide based on this thing what will be the actions which will fall in the domain of the technologist, and when he is going to inform you about that, and when further is need to be done. So that is part of quality planning, and that has to be documented. So that's how proactively you have planned a quality control program for each analyte in your lab. And that is the logic behind of choosing number of controls and the type of rules that you're going to apply. And that further is to be translated into the actions. So many of the analyzers actually plot these Westgard rules. They have a provision, these automatic analyzer to plot these and plot the LJ charts and apply these Westgard rules. But you need to know that which Westgard rules you want the analyzer to apply. And there's a concept and logic behind it. So in conclusion, I would say analytical performance cannot be taken for granted even with the best of technologies. Analytical quality control is a proactive, systematic, well-planned activity. And it is based on a sound science and is the core activity within lab and part of broader quality assurance program. Pathologists need to learn the art and science of analytical quality control and apply it irrespective of the discipline you are in. Once a concept are learned, there are ample tools available to apply these concepts. With 70% clinical decision based on lab, analytical quality control is at the heart of clinical decision making and patient safety. With this, I conclude my lecture. Thank you very much, everyone, for patient listening. I don't know whether Professor Mulazim is,
Okay,
still.
okay. Since Professor Mulazim is traveling, I think before going for a question and answer session, I would like to invite Professor Amir Ejaz for his thoughts and comments. He is the panelist today. Professor Amir Ejaz.
Thank you. Excellent talk, Nusrat. Very, once again, very informative, scientific knowledge and very useful information. Kindly, if you stop sharing your presentation, then we can see the videos.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Done.
Okay.
Oh, Mulazim Sahib is there.
Since we are various categories of pathologists present today, as well as some clinicians, I will give you an example that if a histopathologist carries out all the sample processing and staining the slides and doesn't give any report on the slides, that means nothing. So similarly, if what the data is generated in the lab machines and the various tests in hematology, in chemical pathology, serology, it's just a data number. Quality control or quality assurance makes it a result. So how can we make a result out of data by quality controls? So it is a must for every lab, and I tell you, it's not an easy thing, because now these days mostly private labs, they want budgets, they want finances, etc. So you have to really fight it out. But please do fight. Never perform a test without a control, because only then you can be confident that your data is correct. Whatever you are dishing out is according to the situation. And it is a patient safety issue also. Second very important thing is that if you have carried out the extensive procedure of quality control as told by Brigadier Nusrat, and you are also participating in an international quality assurance or quality control program, as we will discuss in future talks, then it is for your own safety also. Nobody can then challenge your result. If now if somebody takes you to the court that your results are not correct, then you can show them this data of quality, internal quality control and external quality control. So please do carry out. You may face a lot of resistance, because these days laboratories are under administration which are not very much familiar with these things. They want only the budget things and finance things. So you have to be very firm on this. Rest, mashallah, Dr. Nusrat is talking such a nice scientific information, scientific data, and I'll request her to continue this. And if possible, these presentation and these videos should be shared with our.
We will share it. Professor Amir will share it.
It's very, I tell you, it is very useful as a person from. No, I have no words to thank her on this precious Sunday, and for preparation of these, I know it is she must be spending the midnight oil, what they say, for preparing these slides. And I think she has purchased the Westcard site, because it is not free. From our own pocket, she must have paid the charges of Westcard site, because Westcard is a commercial thing. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, we fully agree, Professor Amir Ejaz. Excellent talk by Professor Nusrat. We have Professor Rafiq Khanani as well, I suppose. Can we have his comments, since he's another spirit pathologist? Professor Khanani, if you're there, can you comment? And then we'll have our Secretary General, Dr. Qaisar Sajjad. Today, I think he'll be, giving the vote of thanks later. But if Rafiq Khanani is there, Professor Mulazim. Okay, Professor Bukhari, you take over.
No, please continue it, sir.
Okay, now the floor is open for the question and answers. If anybody has a question, please be brief and have, a very quick answer we'll have from Professor Nuzhat or the panelist. Floor is now open for question and answer. I suppose there are no questions.
I think one of the reasons is probably too much of statistical concepts involved. In fact, I would suggest in future, when I hope the COVID conditions are better, to actually have hands-on workshop on that, so that in some lab, when students are given hands-on tasks to do it, and physically they do it, and then it goes through their hand, only then probably they'll be able to apply this knowledge. And I'm sure the chemistry people are far ahead in applying these concepts, because that's the core that they're doing. But I think the hematologist and immunologist and immunoassays and every thing which is being done on automated need to go through that. I think I'll request Brigadier Amir Ijaz from the platform of PAP to actually somehow make a program, and I'll be, glad
Okay,
to be part of that.
We have now Professor Rafiq Khanani. Let's listen what he has to say.
Assalamu alaikum. In fact, I was listening to
Professor Khanani, before you talk, I am highly obliged and thankful that you have started the PhD in your universities, and really it is a blessing for the PAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Qazi Sahib and Mulazim Sahib. Professor Nuzhat has done wonderful job of enlightening and rejuvenating, our quality standards and controls and all the forgotten things. And I hope that it's going to go a long way in improving the standards of our laboratories. Professor Nuzhat has done wonderful job and has done really burned the night toils, as Professor Mulazim mentioned. And I really appreciate the Pakistan Medical Association for taking and bringing this to everybody, available to everybody. And as per Professor Amir's request, that if these presentations are made available, it will be a great help in our own academic and teaching activities. So thank you very much.
Yes, we'll do that. Carry on, Rafiq, if you have finished. Thank you very much. And if there are no more questions, I think Professor Nuzhat has very, nicely explained everything, and everybody has understood everything. So if there are no more questions, I'll request Dr. Qaisar Sajjad, Secretary General, for the vote of thanks. Dr. Qaisar Sajjad, Secretary General, PMA Center.
Thank you very much, Dr. Qazi, for all your sweet words. I'm really thankful to the presenters, Dr. Nuzhat Salamat. I think the concerned people must have so much knowledge about what she has presented, and I am totally agree with her that there should be a hands-on workshop. And I think, Qazi Sahab, we must think to arrange these type of workshop so that everybody can get all the knowledge from the Dr. Nuzhat. We will arrange everywhere in Pakistan. We will try to arrange. So again, today, a very informative, a very knowledgeable presentation by Dr. Nuzhat Salamat. And I also thankful to all the participants, particularly the panelists, the Dr. Amir, Professor Amir, Dr. Rafiq Khanani, and everybody. Particularly, I thanks to Professor Mulazim. As usual, he is always doing a wonderful job for doing all this PMA PMA webinar. And lastly, I must thanks to Dr. Qazi Wasik. Without him, it's very, not possible to arrange these webinar of Pakistan Medical Association. So thank you very much, Dr. Nuzhat Salamat, Dr. Rafiq Khanani, Professor Mulazim, Dr. Qazi Wasik, and all the participants. And I request everybody to please give a message to everybody to come and join this PMA so that the number should be increased. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Sajjad.
बहुत शुक्रिया. Thank you. Khuda Hafiz.